Hello, this is Mazamir with the Pan-African Book Review. Today with a book from the western part of Africa, Ghana, by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who was the president of the country. The book is entitled Neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. This is a very important book because we are under the yoke of imperialism today. Africa, Latin America, and Asia, most of them are under that problem. World war is not expected, according to Kwame Nkrumah, because of the presence of nuclear facilities. There are limited wars among different regions of countries that are waged by the neo-colonialists. Colonialism had responsibility, but neo-colonialism does not. You don't see your neo-colonial masters, so you don't ask them. But colonialists, maybe the citizens of their own countries or the citizens of the subjugated countries would ask them. According to him, colonialism is defeated after World War II, and neo-colonialism is here alive and well by breaking up larger countries and making them dependent upon the West. The raw materials that are produced in these countries are taken away by the neo-colonialists for low and cheap price. Socialist forces should challenge this, according to him, even if we know what happened to socialism, the socialist bloc. This book, written in 1965, more or less 60 years ago, has its own take on the socialist bloc. Aid is a trap. Investment is a complicated and problematic area. Multilateral aid could be a little bit better than the aid by individual states, but that also has its own problems. Military aid is the last stage where the neo-colonialists have really immersed themselves in your country and maybe trying to save their own agents who are leading the neo-colonies. They come to save them. Sometimes also aid flows to the opposition parties, and social misery increases as a result of these conflict between the opposition and maybe the country, that the leadership that is supporting the people. If Africa is united, this problem of neo-colonialism could be solved. The book, by the way, is not only on Africa, it is on global neo-colonialism. So for this reason, it covers Latin America and Asia as well. If Africa is industrialized, life will improve. But what is happening is balkanization, economical balkanization and political balkanization. When they give freedom, or when African countries got freedom, they are divided along different lines devised by the West, so that they don't cooperate, so that they don't plan nationally, leave alone planning continentally. You know, the French had their own scheme for their independent colonies. The British had their own schemes for their colonies. But the French, since they promoted assimilation, cultural assimilation, had some members of their colonies, politicians, who said that unity would not be beneficial. But later, due to the public pressure, they were forced to give freedom to the people. Even if there is opposition, African unity and independence shall be true, according to him. On agriculture and industry also, he has a point. The West or others want to focus that Africa should be first focusing on agriculture, not industry. But that is not true, according to him. The problem is because industry is controlled by the West, fertilizer, machinery, tractors, and everything is controlled by the West, unless we have our own ways to be sufficient with agricultural produce, with the industrial produce, agriculture cannot grow and make Africa able to achieve industrialization or food self-sufficiency or scientific discovery. So agriculture should be, industrialization should be first, he says. If not, you are the prisoner of those countries who are sending you machineries while you are exporting coffee, tea, and other agricultural produce, even while you are not sufficient yourselves. So if factories are built where the resources are, that is really important. Instead of exporting raw materials at lower prices, prices that are lower and lower. There are stories or tables in this book from Ghana and Nigeria, where the amount of raw materials tripled after a few years. The money they got from that tripled export was less. So you see, less than one third, which was a few years ago, one third of the raw material price they got. So the money you get is diminishing, while the price of the product, the finished good, is increasing year by year. So producing our own produce is one of the important areas. Sometimes some areas of Africa are really effective in certain agricultural produce, so designating them for one produce so that they can produce for a certain region, they can feed a larger area. If, for example, factory should be set up somewhere that could serve a bigger region than a single country. So there should not be duplication of planning when we plan for agriculture or industry in the continent. The colonialist method of religious, educational, and cultural infiltration should be stopped. They don't just infiltrate through economy or politics, but also culturally. We'll come to it later. So their empires or how the West attacks us is as Africans, so how we defend it should be as Africans. A Pan-African way of defending ourselves should be devised according to him. The West or the neo-colonialists should be challenged only on a Pan-African basis. The nature of regional federations or slower unity is one problem, according to him. Or agencies or countries or politicians who say that there should be a slower unification of Africa are in the camp of those who oppose African unity, according to him. So there should be a unity of the continent before we are too late. This is what he believes. It's just 60 years ago. We know what happened. We know how Africa went. He says we don't have time. We should act fast. 60 years ago. So did we act? We don't know. Okay, there was the issue of World War One, the first World War amongst these Europeans. The Second World War, as we said earlier, how it prevented, how it helped us get rid of colonization, and the coming of socialism. So the Second World War, a fight between the emerging powers of Germany and the United States. Just their fight to emerge so that the old powers of France and Britain lose. So even after Germany and Europe got distracted, what happened? After they just lost the war, the United States came and the Marshall Plan was implemented. Europe fell under the control of this, and socialism came. When socialism came, it deterred the neo-colonialists from uh, controlling the entire world. So it became, or it served as a wedge that prevented colonialists, the emerging ones, the United States. Financing, yeah, finance was a great tool. This book goes in depth into financing, how finance was serving, has been serving as a way to control Africa's minerals, Africa's all resources, how the banks, the investors, and the Western forces really control during colonization or after independence. USA controls European investment, banks, and later Africa opens to the United States. The reason for this is because the United States even was promoting independence by writing about their own anti-colonial movement in the United States. So competition among the imperialists is true. The European colonizers, when they are free, what they did was, when they left us, they didn't just leave Africa. They signed just binding agreements so that they will be there after independence. The France, the currency agreements, the different uh, investment agreements, the governments they put there are ways to control Africa. Marshall Plan, we said, German economy controlled. Post World War II, the United States got more advantages. The investors of the West are interlinked. Just a certain investor or a certain company will have stakes in different places. He would be manager here, he would be deputy there, he would be a board member there, and in 600 agencies. We can see the Oppenheimer, the Rockefeller, just how, like a pyramid, they control everything, channeled to one controlling body. If you read headlines of newspapers, you can see the links of, even this book is based on a lot of research from the University of Ghana, from newspaper reports of companies, from reports of multilateral organizations, and books by different from the socialist bloc from Europe and America. So it's a rich one, it's well researched. It's not just propaganda. So the affiliates of one bank or investor will be there, the interlinked. When you are talking to this one, just you learn that this one is also interlinked. They may not tell you that. So that's how Africa, during the colonial time, Africa's resources, gold, tantalum, ore, bauxite, everything was controlled. They threatened after independence, for example, of creating their own synthetic materials so that you see Africa would not sell anything. Even it's not selling, forced labor is there. All the money is channeled to the neo-colonialists without even paying tax. This financial oligarchy was really the worst case, we can say, imperialism's worst situation, where they are masters and the people of the continent are enslaved. Loan is there for independent nations. Monopoly of overseas countries. Monopoly of the political ideology. Control of the colony. There is the political control, there is the economic control, and there is the cultural control, and they control everything. So there is their government, their bank, their investor, they are all interlinked. They need African resources, so Africa cannot get industrialized. Always what they are trying to do is they take the resources, the factory is there in the neo-colonialist countries. Cheap labor is there. They use cheap labor. Still, they come to Africa because they say there is cheap labor. If that company operates in Europe or America, maybe uh, at times during the colonial times, it says there is dozens of folds of daily labor would be required by the European daily labor than the African. Just there is a exemption of tax, machinery, and for when they import the machinery, they don't pay the appropriate payment. They don't pay tax when they export. The book gives us a list of resources Africa has, a detailed list of resources and how they are being exploited, not for the people's benefit, but for the West, for the neo-colonialists. But socialist regimes, socialist governments challenge this. It gives us the issue or the example of Vietnam. There's board members of civilian organizations and also military organizations are the same. The general here or the military personnel have stakes in the civilian. So that is a way. Monopolies, fertilizer monopoly, and monopoly in every area. Aid and new companies coming, investment. This is the new scramble for Africa. The Oppenheimer, the Rockefeller, their empires in Africa, in South Africa, in Rhodesia, in all mining sectors is unbelievable. It's a global empire. The Bantustans, the areas where Africans are kept, supply labor. The chiefs supply labor. So the African natives work there. There is the issue of in the Congo, King Leopold, who used forced labor to get the outputs, the mineral or agricultural outputs for his own gain. No payment of import duties. Just sham agreements with the government after freedom. Fake agreements with tribal even during when the colonialists came, they make the tribal leaders sign fake agreements. Cecil Road, this person who tried to connect Cairo to the Cape Town, how he exploited Africa is given there as one example. Africa's freedom and unity has been hampered by all these agreements, these monopolies, and exploitative systems. The 60 to 70% of world trade and business is controlled by 2% of companies in the world. You see how monopoly is going on? But if African government decide to develop industries, it must be with the shares of Western companies. They don't give you the freedom, the independence to work by yourselves. So foreign interests are there always. Congo after independence, how the Belgian government cheated the leaders and how they obtained guarantees from the future Congo Republic. When you are free, you are not free. We say that France had its own schemes for the colonies to be free. They control the currencies and everything. So in the Congo also, the Belgians played a role in creating conflicts in the Katanga province also. The United States, the CIA coming afterwards. The new, after the colonies, the new neo-colonialists come. Congo was looted 7 billion USD in the immediate years after their independence by way of mineral exploitation. Separate monetary zones, dozens of monetary zones were created in Africa. But if we have a single monetary unit, that would solve Africa's problem. But these zones create problems, different currencies, the pound, the franc, and everything. So the dollar, if there has to be foreign private investment, it has to be carefully regulated. There should be planning, and even these companies should be well regulated, that they will not be the sole monopolizers of a certain sector in the country. Local investment should be promoted. Ships and aircraft that are produced by the West, so that transportation cost keeps increasing unless we produce our own ships and aircraft. Transportation is also at the hands of the West. Transportation from one African country to another is through Europe or America. If that is so, that will be so dangerous. So, trying to establish our own transportation system should be made possible. Just 1962, 1963, that time is the analysis, you see. But we have these problems, some of them intensified at this time also. Tax is raised on non-natives. When tax is raised on non-natives, Western newspapers will be mad, just would be exaggerating, and would threaten that investors would be going to leaving the country. When they face militant people, they switch their tactics. Neo-colonialists, they just don't leave you. They switch tactics. They control you either through finance or by creating one opposition group, armed resistance, and so on. USA's influence on Latin America, Europe, post-World War Europe, and the invisible government in the USA through dozens of spying agencies under the CIA is treated in the book. When the loan is given, another way of controlling Africa, high rates of interest. Aid is also a means of exploitation. Multilateral aid from IMF and World Bank, even if it has some advantages, they ask you to submit plans, to accept their supervision, and so on. This way we are exploited. Culturally also, the CIA there, the Peace Corps, Hollywood,